Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for taking the time to join today. This is our second webinar discussing S44's open source CSMS and how you can leverage this technology to enhance the charging experience for your drivers and your charge point operators, and also how this can help your dev teams as well. Today, we're going to start by talking a little bit about the project itself. We'll talk its creation, its progress, and also where it's headed. Then we're going to dive into some learnings and case studies, a bit of progress that we've made since the last webinar. And these stories are going to represent what we've been hearing when it comes to challenges in the industry and how we might look to address them. Whether you're part of a small business just looking to get into EV charging, part of a nationwide charging network, represent an OEM, or maybe just a hobbyist, we hope that what you hear today will help give you some ideas on how to move forward and tackle whatever blockers you might be facing, and also provide some insight into how we might be of service to you as well. First up, let me go ahead and introduce our team. Thana Paris and Christian Weissman are active contributors to our open source CSMS solution. They also bring with them team lead experience from development functions on many different EV related implementations that included both OCPP and OCPI factors. My name is Justin Acker. I'm the product owner for Citrine OS, which is our open source CSMS. In my time with S44, I've worked on multiple EV charging solutions, acting primarily as an interface between engineering, sales teams, and clients. In my time here, I've experienced a number of different use cases and challenges, and I've worked hard to understand market trends and how our solution can help fill those gaps. Also on the line today is our head of sales, Jason Cardozi. Following the webinar, he'd be more than happy to connect with anybody here for follow-up questions or to explore how we can assist with your specific needs, or even if you're just looking to get in touch. First up, let me talk a little bit about us. S44 is a custom software company with a virtual first cross-functional team situated across the US and Germany. We create bespoke digital experiences to tackle unique needs. We've been operating in the automotive software space for about 10 years, and we've worked in the EV industry specifically for much of that time. In the past, we have taken go ahead and hit the next slide if you could. In the past, we've taken an off-the-shelf white label CPO for a nationwide charging network and replaced that with a fully custom solution that better served the client's needs, and also took their average review scores from a 1 or a 2 to something more like a 4 and a 5. We have a large amount of real-world experience integrating with EMSP solutions with various OEMs and automakers. And most recently, and the topic of today's discussion, we authored the Linux Foundation Energy project, Citrine OS, which is our open source CSMS solution. We've also become an active contributor in the EV Roaming Foundation, and we're working to define future specifications. So let me talk a little bit about why Citrine OS and why open source specifically. You can see a bit of a mission statement here on this slide, but in short, S44 strongly believes that the EV charging industry needs to move into the future, and that future is OCPP 2.0.1, and that future does include a better end user charging experience for drivers and charge point operators. And we don't think that's going to happen with the way the industry has been, where everyone is sort of doing their own thing. By launching an open source project that was the first of its kind, we're hoping to be able to attract more community contribution and break everyone out of the silos they're in so that we can work together for a better end user experience. So a little bit of information about why OCPP 2.0.1 versus 1.6 specifically, if you're not familiar with the specifications. OCPP 1.6 was a great beta or starting point for a specification, but it really is not sufficient for the realities of EV charging even today, and especially not where it's headed. It doesn't provide a great end user experience, and we're really looking for something that can make charging and electric vehicles in general more attractive. A few things that OCPP 2.0.1 brings are listed here, but for more real-world examples, here's a few. With OCPP 2.0.1, you can facilitate true plug-in charge. That means that a driver can roll up, park, plug in, and start charging immediately. And this is intended to allow drivers to navigate their charging experience without struggling with a litany of apps and other technology that might be specific to their car, their phone, the charge point in specific. And better security and certificate handling is what allows for this and allows for really identifying vehicles reliably simply by plugging in. There's also better updates, update handling and change management, config management for your charging hardware. With OCPP 1.6, making updates to chargers and hardwares was often a hassle. Frequently, you had to swap in an entirely new configuration profile, change all settings at once to change just one. And a lot of times that meant downtime, and downtime means people can't charge. And then sometimes it doesn't come back up, and then you have to deploy somebody out to the site to fix it. OCPP 2.0.1 allows for and specifies for very specific change management at a very minute level. You can alter settings easily without all the need for this rigmarole. And the third thing I'd just like to mention here, and to be clear, this is not an exhaustive list, but just the three that I think are most attractive to the average person. Screen and UI control of the charging hardware is vital. Actually updating the display remotely or via a trigger or an automation with OCPP 1.6 was either impossible or had to be custom built by both the charger provider and the CPO creator, and sometimes the MSPs or OEM creators as well. With OCPP 2.0.1, you have better control over what's on the screen in the UI, and this allows for a lot of options that that you could do. Just a couple ideas. It would be pretty easy to provide advertising directly on the screen. If you are working with 7-Eleven or Aldi, maybe you provide a coupon code for a free coffee. Hey, go get a coffee while your car charges. That gets people into the store. Maybe you want to handle personalization. Hey, thanks for coming back and charging with us again, Diane. We hope you enjoyed your last charging experience. Or maybe something like a satisfaction survey, just a simple thumbs up or thumbs down or a star rating, which can help you know from a direct user interface whether the charge point needs attention at that time. So let me talk a little bit about Citrine OS and where it's gone since we released. So since our 1.0 release last year, we have now released our first major update, release 1.1, earlier this month on April 5th. In this release, you see support for advanced device management and UI certification profiles, and a new location data model, which supports geolocation and device status, and also allows for sending OCPP messages via the message UPI from our Directus flow, which is the default UI that we provide with Citrine OS. We also have provided a few technical updates. We refactored the central system to better support alternative architectures, so it's easier to put Citrine OS behind a different API gateway. We provided an in-memory option for the message bus, and we've also refactored the project to be an NPM workspace, publishing its dependencies on the Node Project Manager registry to facilitate easier installation and setup for devs and hobbyists. So here's the full roadmap for the life of the project. You can see our initial release in October and the 1.1 release that I just talked about earlier this month in April 2024. Coming fast down the line, we've got ISO 15118 support coming up next in May. That is certificate handling for security, and this is what facilitates plug-in charge, which I talked about a little bit earlier. We've also got OCPI support coming for roaming assistance. And then in June, we'll be looking at smart charging, reservations, and scan and charge. Scan and charge being the ability to initiate a charge from a displayed QR code on a charger. And by the end of July 2024, we are targeting a full release with full OCPP 2.0.1 compliance. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Christian Weissman. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the more technical lessons we've learned in the last 6 months and how that's informed future development. Christian?
All right, thanks, Justin. So over the last few months, we've visited some Plugfests and had lots of conversations with folks of the industry. And one major theme that we saw pop up over and over is that WebSockets is more or less a solved problem for lots of folks. So they might already have an AWS API gateway handling it for them, or some other setup that they've maintained. And that's not necessarily the solution they're looking for. So we took that back and thought about it. How can we make our solution a bit more adaptable and fit into other architectures? So we refactored the central system and extracted out basically the WebSocket handling. So with that, we now have the opportunity to take in messages via other ways. So for instance, via REST endpoints or gRPC. With that, we want to become more adaptable in fitting as like a little puzzle piece inside a big infrastructure that already exists. That way we become more reusable and are in general flexible in all the directions. The second lesson that we heard or learned is that we're missing a testing CSMS in general in the community. So while we are immersed in our testing setup and we have our Postman collections ready and we're all over the place in understanding what to do to test scenarios, we thought, well, others might not be that immersed. So we introduced some flows into Directus, the UI that's supplied with Citrine right now, which is also an open source project. And those flows are basically registered from Citrine into Directus. And so Directus then has some buttons on the side. So you can, for instance, select a charger and say, all right, let's reset that one. And as you can see on the video on the side there, that's what we're doing. So based on this charger, we click the reset. We select which Citrine instance and then a tenant, and then it goes immediately. All right, and for that, moving forward, we're going to introduce some more features that help testing CSMSs / testing chargers from the CSMS side. Moving forward. So looking ahead in 1.2, what we are working on is having a better CA handling. So we already handle self-signed certificates, but once again, some things that we noticed out on Plugfests and talking with other folks is they want to not handle our self-signed certificates. They want to talk with or have a certificate that is trusted by a higher certificate authority. And that's our main focus for 1.2. Then looking ahead, we're working on OCPI 2.1. So initially we had thought we're going to jump right on with OCPI 3.0, but in reflection, we think that 2.2.1 is probably still quite relevant and still very useful. And while we're quite ahead with OCPP 2.1, sticking with or always jumping ahead already with OCPI 3.0 might not be the best move, and not everyone will adapt as quickly as we want to. And so we're implementing OCPI 2.2.1, as well as introducing multi-tenancy for the CPO side. And with that, I'll hand it off to Thana.
Hi, thanks, Christian. So I'm going to be discussing some business use cases for Citrine OS. These hypothetical use cases are based on S44's extensive experience in the industry, and as well as the opportunities that have arisen for us since we first announced Citrine OS and authored the project. We've had the opportunity at some conventions to talk with a lot of thought leaders in the space and to hear from people interested in using Citrine OS about the challenges that they hope it might be able to solve. I'm going to be covering 3 different use cases of increasing complexity. And these will be showcasing the ways in which we deliberately designed Citrine to be able to solve the problems in industry that we've seen. So our first use case is a small business owner who is purchasing some L2 chargers. They've decided to purchase some OCPP 201 compliant L2 chargers for their parking lot, and they want to install these chargers and then commission and operate them themselves. And to that end, they have set up a server on site that will be running the open source software Citrine OS. So I'm going to go over Citrine OS's system architecture in a diagram here. So to start with, we have the charging stations, the 201 compliant charging stations. These charging stations will communicate with Citrine via a WebSocket, which they'll send the OCPP messages over. Those will be consumed by a message router. That router then places the messages onto a broker, which distributes them. These messages are then consumed by a series of modules. The modules, after consuming the message off of the broker, will persist some of the data to a database, and they will enact business logic in order to respond to these messages. We can see here that the data is written to a relational database, and on top of that we have Directus. As was previously mentioned, Directus is a user interface. It's another open source project that gives people direct access to the data that is persisted by the modules. This can include stuff like being able to configure the chargers for a particular boot process. So you can set the boot to pending, and then when the charger connects for the first time with the charger ID that you have set to pending, it will then send some messages automatically, such as a get base report. And this commissioning process can be tweaked by hand in Directus. It also allows you to enter in information such as customer authentication information or RFID cards or any other method supported by your charger. In addition to all of these modules that handle the business logic, we also have a payments module, which will handle integration with Stripe in order to provide a payment solution. This includes being able to set up pricing for the charger, which will then be pushed down to the charger via OCPP 201 messages. And when the charge is starting, the payments module, before the charge has been authenticated, the payments module can make a request to Stripe for a QR code. This QR code can then be sent down to the charger via OCPP 201 via display message. And then the charger will display this QR code, and this provides the scan and charge feature, which was mentioned earlier. The user gets to pull out their mobile device, they scan the QR code at the charger. This will then send them to Stripe, and they'll get to put in their payment information. So all in all, this setup, which is 100% from the open source solution, will allow the small business owner to set pricing as they please in order to cover the costs of electricity as well as any maintenance on the server they have set up or the chargers themselves. And this system will be self-sustaining. And they get all of the features that are in the open source Citrine implementation, which includes, like we've mentioned, the scan and charge and plug and charge in the near future. And all this has been possible without needing any customization or any paid feature whatsoever. So for the next business use case, we'll be talking about a charging network that is looking to replace a software as a service charging station management system that they have been using for their network. So that this charging network already has a full network of OCPP 1.6 compliant chargers. However, they have been using a SaaS in order to manage these chargers. They already have their own tech stack when it comes to an operator UI and mobile apps for their end users. However, they're looking to get away from needing to rely on a different company for their CSMS needs and have chosen Citrine OS in order to bootstrap this effort in a short time frame. So this is what we covered sort of in the first use case. This is the standard Citrine OS. We can see here, though, that it's charging stations with 1.6 layers that are connecting. So when those messages get onto the message broker, they're not going to be the message types consumed by standard Citrine modules, because standard Citrine modules consume 201 messages. So in order to operate these OCPP 1.6 chargers, there will need to be custom modules. Now, since OCPP 1.6 is missing certain features, as has been talked about already in this webinar, usually in order to operate a charging network, charging station management systems and hardware vendors need to extend the standard 1.6 messages to support the features that they need for a proper modern charging network. This means that these 1.6 modules may be processing extended OCPP 1.6 messages that are specific to this charging network. There may be extensions to the measure ends, for example, for meter values that are not usually communicated by 1.6 chargers in order to surface diagnostic information that OCPP 1.6 does not support natively. On the other hand, if you're not going to extend the messages of 1.6, 1.6 also does provide a data transfer message. The data transfer message allows you to pass a custom payload that can be anything. It can be any kind of custom message. These are usually specific to a charging network, and sometimes even within a charging network, these are specific to a hardware vendor. So again, there's a custom module that's needed in order to process these data transfer messages. However, once all of these messages are being processed, they can be used to support the existing tech stack that this charging network already possessed. So they already had an operator UI that they possessed that was on top of their SaaS CSMS, and they had a backend for their mobile app, which was on top of their SaaS CSMS. Both of these are supported by an API gateway built on top of Citrine's API, and the operator UI can hook into the message broker in order to surface live logs from the chargers, giving insight into the current state of the network. So to sum up what's happened here, the software as a service charging station management system has been replaced by Citrine seamlessly. And heading into the future, this charging network will be able to support 201 chargers without any additional changes. So this can be done without any disruption to the service. So from the outside, the replacement of the software as a service charging station management system has not changed the experience of using this network. And not only will this network moving forward be able to hook in OCPP 201 chargers without needing to make very many changes, but they'll also be able to reap the benefits of any new features from Citrine, including, for example, the OCPI support that was mentioned on the roadmap. For the third business use case, we'll be looking at a charging station management system for a fleet network. They already have a robust 1.6 tech stack, and they're looking to expand into being able to support OCPP 201 chargers. They have a fleet user interface for their clients that has a lot of advanced features that they are very happy with, and they don't want to need to sacrifice any of these features moving forward into OCPP 201. So we're going to start with their existing tech stack. So this is what the network already has. It already has one OCPP 1.6 charging stations that are connecting to a WebSocket service. This WebSocket service handles all the WebSockets and then passes this information, passes these messages down to the monolith. That OCPP 1.6 monolith processes all of the OCPP 1.6 messages and persists their information to a non-relational database. It then also supports a fleet user interface that has all of the advanced features for the fleet users. Now, in order to support some of these, so for example, to support knowing when the chargers are having issues with overheating and might need a cable to be replaced, or in order to push down advertisement campaigns in the form of images, or in order to control the pricing associated with these charging stations. All of these things aren't natively supported by OCPP 1.6. And in the previous example, we covered how you could extend standard 1.6 messages for some of this functionality. You could also have used data transfer messages in order to get some of this functionality. A third option that we've seen in the field is that sometimes hardware vendors will have a back channel separate from their OCPP connection. So in this case, these chargers have a back channel that is an API that communicates with a vendor digital asset management system. And this is what supports many of the advanced features in this fleet user interface. So Citrine is being added to this picture. We can see here that Citrine is being placed behind the WebSocket termination. This is possible due to the changes that we mentioned earlier in this webinar. Now, Citrine's message router doesn't need to directly handle the WebSockets itself. It could receive the messages via an API and then place them onto the message broker as normal, where they will be consumed by the modules, and the rest of that we're familiar with. Now, in order to integrate Citrine into the existing system, some customization will be needed. First, since there is functionality in the Fleet UI that's based upon the information that is in the non-relational database, a custom transactions module is made that will persist transaction information to that database in the form that it's expecting. Then, in order to support some of these advanced features in the fleet user interface regarding being able to monitor the chargers and being able to push down images and pricing information, a custom service will be added here that the fleet will depend on in order to provide these advanced features without needing to use the vendor back channel. So this custom adapter module would translate these advanced features that used to require the back channel into 201 compliant messages. This means that in the future, any OCPP 201 compliant charging station that connects to this system will be able to provide the full experience in the Fleet UI, even if it doesn't have the proprietary vendor back channel. So the outcome of this is that the fleet charging network can now connect OCPP 201 chargers. In addition to that, it's no longer trapped into needing to use specific vendors for their charging network. They can use any OCPP 201 compliant charger they don't need custom vendor logic. And since they have replaced their OCPP 1.6 monolith with Citrine, they now have a more flexible, more easy to extend modular system. And again, since they are using Citrine, they will get access to the open source developments in the community, and they will be able to reap those benefits heading into the future, however long they stick with Citrine OS. All right, thank you. Now it's time for some Q&A.
Thanks, Donna. I just wanted to jump in real quick and highlight a couple things. Everyone, first, thank you for your attendance. We appreciate all the support behind the Citrine OS project. Thanks to this team for putting together a great webinar. And you heard earlier from Thana that these were hypothetical case studies that we ran through today. I talked to a lot of people, a lot of companies, and a lot of different use cases. And you can see how Citrine can handle multiple use cases over different EV charging experiences. And I think our team also is very innovative. And you see how when we listen to the market, good things come out of it, and we make real world changes into the solution to be able to benefit the masses. So thank you all again for attending. Looking forward to speaking to anybody who's interested in having a chat post this call. We have a QR code here that will put you directly into my calendar for any follow-up conversations. And I think we can open it up to Q&A. I see if anyone has any questions, there's a Q&A channel, which you can pop a question right into the chat there. And I also see Mark has his hand raised.
Okay. I see a question from John. Is Citrine OS OCPP 201 certified? And if not, is certification planned? So we have not yet gotten a certification from the Open Charge Alliance. However, we've been in conversation with them about getting that certification, and it will be happening quite soon. I would expect within a month or two at most. And we also had the opportunity to test with the OCA's testing tool, the OCTT. And we used it to test all of our core and advanced security features. And those tests are the same ones that they run for the certification profile. So we are prepared for that certification. I see a question from Tim. Will this recording and deck be available after the call? Yes, it's being recorded and it will be available, I believe. Where will it be available?
It'll automatically get emailed out, or the recording will automatically get emailed out to all attendees post the webinar. And if you need a copy of the physical PDF deck, just book a meeting with me or send me an email and I'll get it over to you. And there's also, it'll also be on our, we also have a YouTube channel where it'll be linked, as well as LinkedIn, I believe.
Got it. I see a question here from Andrew asking about support, which is my background. So I'm going to jump in here. Who's responsible for support? And the example given is if a station is sending OCPP messages that is creating an issue, who resolves these real world issues? I think this would depend heavily on the implementation and particular use case of both when it comes to the business and the technology specifically. Generally in these cases, when in situations that we've worked with in the past, the sort of operator of the charging network has had a network operations center or support center that has handled these sorts of things and made sure that the call to action was forwarded on to the correct people to handle that.
I see a question from Dan. The case studies mostly dealt with scenarios where a customer would look at moving away from a CSMS. Do you see any opportunity to work with software as a service CSMS platforms? I think that software as a service CSMS platforms could use Citrine, and so yes, I do see that there are opportunities to work with them. For example, the fleet use case could also potentially have been a SaaS itself that was looking to be able to also support 201 chargers with its SaaS product. Before we get too far ahead of it, I want to say, Mark, I did see the question about the Tesla wall connectors. I'm afraid we have not talked to anyone about those connectors. So I'm not familiar with what OCPP communication layer they make.
Yeah, I have not spoken to Tesla about those either, Mark, but we can take that offline too.
I see.
And just a reminder, if you do have questions, please just feel free to keep filling them in the Q&A section here, and we will tackle them.
A question from Ankit: what are the minimum recommended RAM flash requirements for running Citrine OS? It doesn't take very much. I believe in terms of RAM, I've been able to do it with less than 4 gigabytes of RAM, and it has minimal requirements in terms of processing power. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but you shouldn't, with a modern laptop, be running into any limitations with running it locally. And in the cloud, it all depends on how many chargers you're planning to connect. John, I see, are the custom/translation adapters part of the open source version of Citrine OS? No, they are not. Those are in the in use cases 2 and 3, the additional modules mentioned, such as the 1.6 modules, are all custom developed in those use cases. They are not part of the open source. Mohit, see you asked, how does the data policy for Citrine OS look like? Do you persist the information provided by the business? So Citrine OS itself is an open source project. It is just a GitHub repository. It's not software running in the cloud somewhere. As far as data policies for prospective customers who are interested in using Citrine OS to develop their own CSMS, we do have extensive knowledge of security when it comes to information at rest that needs to be encrypted. Yes, there will be data policies depending on the scope of the project.
Just to jump in there, there's no hidden back channel that phones home any information of where Citrine is deployed, but you can all see that in the open source.
That's true. Yeah, if someone, anyone can take the Citrine OS project and make their own CSMS with it. I see a question, Mark. Have you or anyone here stood up Citrine OS in any sandboxes that we might use for testing? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Could you elaborate?
And so we've stood it up in cloud environments and tested it and went to Plugfests, etc. If you want to test it, you can Docker Compose up and it's running on your local machine. If you want to deploy it, that's also fairly easy to do if you know a little bit about cloud. Yeah, but we don't have like a offering where you can use our cloud compute to try it out, just like on the internet.
I see a question here from Chad regarding sort of our opinions on OCA certification being established as a default. I don't think in this forum that we're at liberty to comment on what our personal opinions are, since we're more talking about the project here. I can say that our intention is to become OCA certified by the time that we do our full release.
Just a quick byline on that topic as well, that there's been a lot of conversation about implementation first approaches to protocols. And it is our hope that in the future, Citrine OS as an open source project could be part of that conversation, where future versions of OCPP may be tested first by being implemented with Citrine OS. Rather than first created abstractly and then later be implemented for the first time when somebody approaches the certification for the first time.
Yeah, and I can jump in on a question from Greg in regards to Switch's similar project. I don't believe that's built on the Citrine OS platform, from what I understand. This is a completely different project that we're building from scratch.
I see a question from John. Got a charger connected to Citrine today. I got a boot notification through. How do we get trigger messages like get variables from the CSMS? So this is a golden question for our Docker, our Discord channel as well. We have a lot of conversation there, and people will be able to answer this very quickly for you. I suggest that you go there so that I can provide a more thorough explanation. You can find a link to the Discord channel on the GitHub IO page. That you can see the link to the Citrine OS GitHub IO on this slide.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was going to chime in too on that last question, Greg. There's on our website, there's the direct link to GitHub. You can join the Discord community. You can get to our YouTube page. And then on the solution side of the business, how we actually commercialize Citrine or implement it and bring it to market. We have a page that shows the different options from a hybrid or an enterprise approach to using it strictly out of the open source community. And I'll pop that in the chat for you.
I see a question. I have a case where we may want to replace a white label OCCP service, but keep our own OCPI modules. Is that an option? This integration point in such a case. So you can integrate with Citrine to make it part of a system that already has an OCPI layer in a few different ways, depending on how you want to approach it. There are already on Citrine OS CRUD APIs for the different data that it collects, including stuff like transactions and charging stations. So you could use those CRUD endpoints to pull the information needed for your OCPI layer. That would be an approach. You could also hook into the message broker directly if you wanted to consume the OCPP messages yourself. It kind of depends on what type of logic you're trying to retain. And yeah, that's another thing that we could discuss further, either on the Discord, or if you're looking for in-depth assistance, perhaps you should reach out to Jason for more information. I see a question from Kushbu. With OCPP 201, which version of OCPI will it support? So the first version of OCPI we're planning to support with Citrine OS is going to be 221. When OCPI 3.0 gets released, we will also be supporting it. So we will end up supporting both versions. And they will be both built on top of our already existent OCPP 201 logic. So 221 in the near future, and then 3.0 as soon as it's available to the public.
All right, we still got about 10 minutes. Great questions, everyone. Please keep them coming.
I see a question from Ali. What's the plan for 2.1? I think you may be referring to the OCPP 2.1 spec that's coming out soon. So when it is released, we will be updating Citrine OS to support it. 2.1, as far as we know right now from having spoken to people in the working group that is developing it, is mostly updates and improvements to the ISO 15118 section of the protocol in order to handle the newly released ISO 15118-20 spec. So it's not going to be a major overhaul like the change between 1.6 and 2.1 was. It won't require us to drastically change Citrine. It will be primarily adding additional functionality and small tweaks to the ISO 15118 support. So we will be adopting it when it is released, and we don't foresee any major difficulties in doing so.
To add on, we have a little generator that takes the JSON schemas and puts them basically into Citrine, into the data module, into the data underlying library, I guess, to make it easy to validate against each message type.
All right, last call for questions. Sounds like we're wrapping up.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions, I just want to thank everybody again for coming by. What? It's one last one sneaking in here. I don't know if we want to jump on that quickly.
Yeah. Ali asking, any security features that are adopted? So we've implemented all of the advanced security section of the 201 protocol. This means that when it comes to WebSocket connections, you can use security profiles 2 or 3, which support TLS and MTLS respectively. And this also means that we have support for manufacturer certificates, which can be used for secure FTPS firmware updates over the air. So yes, that we have adopted several of the security features in OCPP 201. And thank you, Mark. We appreciate it. We appreciate the congratulations.
It was kind of brought to my attention here that we actually missed a question earlier from Kushbu. Is there any programming language dependency while switching from 1.6 to 2.0.1 for calling customer modules? I'm not entirely sure what the question is here. Citrine is primarily an API based, so you can call it how you want to call it. But I'll let Thena jump in, or Christian if they have any additional follow up there.
I'm not sure I 100% understand the question.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either.
Yeah, I will say that so Citrine OS, the modules that consume messages from the message broker don't need to be written all in the same language. Our main repository is in TypeScript, but we've already had a major contributor in the form of Stackbox who created a module that's written in Python. So when it comes to creating additional modules for Citrine, you're not restricted in what programming language you do so. So in the use case where we created the 1.6 custom modules, those could have been in any programming language. The only requirement is that they're able to take messages off the message broker and put them back on. I'm not sure if that answers your question. Please clarify it if it does not.
Yeah, and if we aren't able to clarify here, just a reminder, anybody can reach out to Jason after this, and he'll be happy to get you in touch with the right people for any remaining burning questions, or if anything comes up in the shower after this. Yeah. As it is, it kind of looks like we've addressed most questions here. So I, again, just want to say thanks to everybody for spending your time. We know your time's valuable, and we appreciate you giving us a chance to show off what we've done with Citrine and what we think is the sort of the best way to push the industry forward. Wherever you're situated in the EV charging space, whether you're fully entrenched or just getting into it or just a hobbyist, we hope you'll find some use for Citrine. We hope you'll also connect with us after this and collaborate with us moving forward. And thank you all so much.